19 and the nays are 211. The joint resolution is passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
The cheers erupted on the House floor as MAGA Mike Johnson and Donald Trump faced another humiliating defeat. By a vote of 219 to 211, the House of Representatives voted to ban or block Donald Trump's tariffs against Canada, to revoke those tariffs. Now, this follows, of course, what took place yesterday when MAGA Mike Johnson tried to bring what's called a rule to the floor, which would have precluded the House of Representatives from voting to block Donald Trump's tariffs against Canada, Mexico, or the rest of the world for an entire year. So MAGA Mike tried to block the debate to prevent Congress from even taking this vote to block Donald Trump's tariffs against the world. MAGA Mike was outvoted yesterday by a significant amount as well. 217 against the rule and only 214 in favor of the rule. And because voting to block Donald Trump's tariffs against the world is something called a privileged resolution, Democrats were able to bring it to the House floor for a vote yesterday, and the Democrats, along with 6 Republicans, voted against Donald Trump's Canada tariffs. And this was a massive loss for Donald Trump and MAGA Mike Johnson. Here are the 6 Republicans who voted against Trump and joined with the Democrats: Thomas Massey, Don Bacon, Brian Fitzpatrick, Jeff Hurd, Kevin Kiley, and Dan Newhouse. Now, this follows Donald Trump threatening any Republican in the House who would dare vote against him and MAGA Mike Johnson would suffer severe consequences. Well, the Republicans defied him and MAGA Mike. The Republicans rebuked him, and those 6 Republicans at least joined with Democrats in the House of Representatives. Folks, the dam has broken, and Donald Trump is losing each and every day. Here's what Trump posted: any Republican in the House or Senate that votes against the tariffs will seriously suffer the consequences come election time. And that includes primaries. Our trade deficit has been reduced by 78%. The Dow Jones has just hit 50,000 and the S&P 7,000, all numbers that were considered impossible just 1 year ago. Really, our deficit has decreased 78%. You're just making up numbers. Donald Trump goes on to say, in addition, tariffs have given us great national security because the mere mention of the word has countries agreeing to our strongest wishes. Tariffs have given us economic and national security, and no Republican should be responsible for destroying this privilege. President Donald J. Trump. The privilege is in Article 1 of the Constitution. The power belongs to Congress. Congress has the power over taxes, and tariffs are a form of tax. So if indeed that privilege, as you call it, or what seems to be a curse, is wanted because 95% of it's passed on to consumers, which is why inflation is surging and actually why we had a jobs recession last year, Congress can pass a law. But Congress doesn't want this. They just rebuked you, Donald. Donald Trump also posted the following message as well, right as these tariffs against the world by Trump were rebuked by Congress. Trump posts, Canada has taken advantage of the United States on trade for many years. They are among the worst in the world to deal with, especially as it relates to our northern border. Tariffs make a win for us easy. Easy Republicans must keep it that way. President Donald J. Trump. Now, we know that Donald Trump always attacks Canada, defames Canada, calls it the 51st state, attacks its sovereignty. But what makes this specifically disgusting is that for anybody following world events, in British Columbia, Canada just suffered a major school shooting at a school in British Columbia where 9 innocent people lost their lives. Shooter took his own life as well. 25 people seriously injured. Mostly all the countries across the world called Canada to show remorse, standing with Canada. You know, when I heard from Prime Minister Carney earlier in the day, he mentioned all the countries that called him. He didn't mention the United States. Instead, Donald Trump, rather than showing sympathy and remorse for what's going on in Canada right now, Donald Trump posts this attack. At the same time, Congress voted to revoke, remove, rebuke. You pick the R word, you pick whatever you want to call it, but stop the tariffs. Congressmember Don Bacon, Republican, writes the following. Congress has Article 1 constitutional responsibility on tariffs. We cannot and should not outsource our responsibilities. As an old-fashioned conservative, I know tariffs are a tax on the American consumers. I know some disagree, but this debate and vote should occur in the House. We also heard from Gary Shapiro, who was reposted by Don Bacon. These tariffs are strategic. They make products less affordable, squeeze manufacturers, and slow startups. Thanks to House Dems and Kevin Kiley, Don Bacon, and Massey for rejecting yesterday's procedural motion and preserving congressional authority on trade. And as Brendan Duke explains and is reposted by Don Bacon, wow, the Congressional Budget Office just came out with its latest estimates, and it estimates that U.S. consumers bear 95% of the Trump tariffs. Basically, foreign firms bear 5% of them, U.S. companies bear 30% of them, but other U.S. companies get to raise prices on consumers from less competition, so that nets to zero, and consumers pay the rest. And Don Bacon reposts Scott Lincecum saying, shocked, I tell you, that the CBO would find basically the same thing regarding tariff incidents that the St. Louis Fed, the Kiel Institute, Tax Foundation, Harvard Business School, and others have found. Shocked, I tell you. State regime media, which calls itself Fox, is saying tariff turmoil. The House passed legislation aimed at reversing Trump's tariffs on Canada, with several Republicans joining Democrats for a rare rebuke of Donald Trump. By the way, just take a look right here at some of these statistics. We did this analysis using the Yale Budget Lab and CBO and Joint Committee on Taxation data. The Trump Republican cost of living in MAGA Mike's district increased about $2,000 average for 298,000 working and middle-class families in Louisiana's 4th congressional district. The same analysis for Steve Scalise's district raised costs about $2,000 as well. Same thing for MAGA Republican Tom Emmer's district.
This time of year, when it's cold and dark by dinner time, all I want is something warm, comforting, and easy. The last thing I want to do after a long day is overthink dinner. That's why I've been loving Home Chef. It shows up at my door with fresh, pre-portioned ingredients, easy recipes to follow, and meals that actually taste great. I've tried everything from their classic meal kits to the express options, and honestly, the oven-ready trays have been a lifesaver on busy nights. Everything is laid out step by step. Super simple, and the meals feel restaurant quality without the stress. They've worked with chefs like Gordon Ramsay to bring incredible recipes straight to your kitchen, and you'll find these chef-inspired recipes across Home Chef's culinary collection, classic meal kits, and express options. And people really love it. Home Chef is rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease. There are over 30 meal options each week, including 30-minute meals, microwave lunches, and even a dedicated family menu for 4 or 6 serving dinners. Plus, Home Chef customers save an average of $86 per month on groceries. Last week, I had Ramsay's crispy sesame shrimp with snap peas and yuzu slaw, and I felt like I was eating out at a nice restaurant. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering my listeners 50% off and free shipping for your first box, plus free dessert for life. Go to homechef.com/Meidas. That's homechef.com/Meidas for 50% off your first box and free dessert for life. homechef.com/Meidas, MEIDAS, must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert.
Now, MAGA Mike was asked what he thought about this House resolution rescinding Trump's Canada tariffs, which is a massive rebuke of him and Donald Trump. And MAGA Mike's like, he's not upset. He'll just veto it. He'll just veto it. He'll just veto it? Okay, well, if there is a supermajority, he can veto it. But in any event, even if he vetoes it, we now have all of the Republicans in the House and soon to be in the Senate on record about where they stand on causing these massive tax tax increases on the American people who are suffering, MAGA Mike, because these are being paid by the American consumer. Watch what MAGA Mike has to say. Play this clip.
Either they will pass the House version of the bill, or they're going to miss the other two and we'll vote. Right, that's my expectation.
How upset the presidency will be if the Republicans buck him on tariffs right now?
He's not upset. I just left the White House. He understands what's going on. It's not going to affect or change his policy. He can veto these things if they come to him.
He's not going to back off at all?
The president's trade policies are working. Look at the economic data. Look at the stock market above 50,000. Look at the reduction in the trade deficit by 78%. The number just came out. There's no reason to reverse course right now.
We'll see what it is. Thank you.
Also, MAGA Mike was again asked today by Manu Raju, who does a great job on Capitol Hill. Hat tipped him. Hat tipped to our DC bureau as well, led by Pablo Manriquez, who does a great job. But here, Manu Raju was asking MAGA Mike about Donald Trump's DOJ going after those 6 Democratic lawmakers, the 2 senators, and the 4 members of the House of Representatives for making a video saying that our troops should not follow unlawful orders, which is just a restatement of the law. MAGA Mike, who's supposed to still protect Article 1 and things like speech or debate and the First Amendment, he doesn't because he's a Trump lackey. He's a sycophant. Watch what MAGA Mike says as he kind of like walks away from Manu Raju. Play this clip.
The administration failed to secure this indictment against those 6 Democrats. You have been long against weaponizing the Justice Department. How can you say this is not being weaponized when they're going after Democrats and they're not able to even secure an indictment?
I am very much and very consistently opposed to the Department of Justice being weaponized in any way. Over the 4 years of the Biden-Harris administration, they were engaging in an open lawfare, and we made a lot of noise about that.
Isn't that precisely what's happening right now?
Let me tell you what is different here. First of all, I haven't seen any of the documentation on the indictment that was being sought in this. And I am a lifelong advocate and a jealous advocate of the First Amendment and free speech. I used to litigate those cases for 20 years. So, but I would tell you that a line is crossed, and it's very serious when you have leaders here in the Senate and the House effectively telling members of the military to defy orders. And that is exactly the words that they use. And some of these are highly respected former military officers. And, you know, one of them is a senator who, had a long and storied career. So it has an effect on young service members. It's a very dangerous gambit that they were playing. Should they be sent to jail? Probably not. But we need to call it out as being wildly inappropriate, and they need to...
But this was interesting data as well. So in fiscal year 2013, for example, as Aaron Blake points out, federal grand juries rejected indictments just 5 times out of 165,000 cases. Grand juries have now rejected Trump administration indictments for one of the 3 Comey charges, Sandwich Guy, several other protesters, Letitia James again, now 6 congressional Democrats. And by the way, we've seen dozens and dozens and dozens of cases be rejected by grand juries under the Trump regime. Also, we seem to be heading towards a shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security. Senator Thune, who's the Senate leader, and MAGA Mike Johnson are basically saying, we're not going to be able to make a deal with Democrats. We'll see what happens because the MAGA Republicans refuse to have the masks removed from ICE agents, refuse to have ICE agents prevented from going to the polls. Pretty despicable, basic stuff. Provide judicial warrants. Oh my God, the Fourth Amendment. Unreasonable search and seizures. Wow, wowee. Let's play over here. You have Enton over on CNN. Just shows you how unpopular these tariffs are against Canada, and and why the American people stand with Canada. It's Donald Trump's ridiculous hatred of Canada, his venom. Here, play this clip.
Canadians grade of Trump's first term. Look at this. First year of his second term, 66%. 66% give him a giant big F. F as in failure, compared to just 6% who give him an A. And keep in mind that this 66% includes a plurality of members of every single party in Canada. It doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right. You do not like Donald Trump if you are a Canadian.
So if he did make Canada the 51st state and ran for a third term, it seems unlikely he would get Canada's electoral votes.
It would seem extremely unlikely that he would get Canadians' electoral votes. And I will note that they really don't want to become the 51st state. The polling also shows that.
How about the other direction, U.S. views of Canada?
Okay, so if Canadians really don't like Donald Trump, how do Americans feel about Canada? Well, they actually like Canada. Look at this. The net popularity rating of Canada among Americans, among all adults, it's plus 46. Democrats, plus 64. Independents, plus 46. And even among Republicans, it's plus 30. Canada was the most popular country tested by this latest poll from the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. And I will note, of course, that this plus 46 is significantly higher than Donald Trump's own net popularity rating here in America. So Canada, more popular than Donald Trump in Donald Trump's own country.
Well, that's something. All right. How has tourism been affected by all of this?
Yeah. Okay. So, it had the tariffs, then of course there's this whole bridge situation. But here's the thing, which is there are real tourist dollars at stake. And take a look here. Tourism in 2025 versus 2024. Canadians to America. Look at that. Down, way down 25%. Americans to Canada, just down about 2%, basically steady. Canadians really taking their anger out by not coming to the country of the United States of America, not spending their tourist dollars, while Americans are basically going to Canada in the same numbers.
And this, of course, matters because my sources tell me that Canadians represent the biggest number of visitors to the United States of any country on all of planet Earth. All right. You mentioned tariffs. There is a big Supreme Court decision we are waiting on and have been waiting on whether many of the president's tariffs are legal. What are the prediction markets saying about that?
Yeah, okay. So all this may be for naught because just take a look here. The chance Supreme Court rules against Trump's tariffs, 70% according to the Kalshi prediction market, 70% chance. So all of this political angst, all of this money lost to tourism, and it may all be for naught because chances are, at least according to those who are putting their money where their mouth is, that the Supreme Court is going to rule against Trump's tariffs.
Someday. Eventually.
Eventually. We don't know when it's going to be.
All right, Harriet, and thank you.
There you have it, folks. Let me know what you think about all of this. Hit subscribe. Help us get to 6 million subscribers. We appreciate y'all so much. Thanks for everything, everybody.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to add the MeidasTouch podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts for new updates every single day.